Well, the independence movement is in the news a lot, and again, and it's a good thing, though not for a good reason. So, Alberta's chief electoral officer is trying to be derelict in his duty, in my view, though I understand why the premier doesn't want to get into a battle with that person and has put the question for proposed for a referendum by the Alberta Prosperity Project to the Court of King's bench to have them rule on whether or not we're allowed to have a referendum on it. And, so that went to court today. And the usual suspects went to court to support us not having the right to vote on independence. So that lets me know who we're up against. It's just one of those reminders letting you know you're on the side of right. Because the opponents for independence are opponents of democracy. They're opponents of freedom. They're opponents of choice. They don't even want to let you vote on it. See, I can understand opposing independence. That's fine. I don't share that view, of course, but I can understand being opposed to it. But to fight against our very right to even hold a referendum on it shows us you're anti-democratic. You're insecure in your case. You don't want to let Albertans choose. So I'm talking about, Thomas Lukaszuk, the disgraced Redford-era politician who's been heading up the anti-Alberta petition. The last I saw online is that there should be a ruling on this by the 14th. That's one of the good news things, because, of course, the courts can drag things out for a long, long, long time. Now, what will happen if the judge comes out and says that, no, you're not allowed to hold a referendum on independence? Your question is unconstitutional. That's going to be something really interesting, actually, because that's also telling Quebec that they can no longer hold any referendums on independence. I got a feeling, and I know a lot of people dismiss it, but rest assured, guys, the independence sentiment in Quebec is still strong, and it's still there. And God knows the cowardice with our courts, our politicians, when it comes to dealing with Quebec. With Alberta, they tell us to stick it up in our butts whenever we want to talk about it. With Quebec, they kiss the butts when it comes to the independence movement. So and I wonder if the judge is going to be thinking about that, because he's not just going to be telling Alberta that you can't have that vote. He's telling Quebec as well. And as well down there, and the media giving a lot of air to, what's his name, Alan Adam, the chief from up north. He's a rented chief. He took $55,000 from Tides to oppose oil sands development. Any other politician gets tens of thousands of dollars and gets caught taking that to make a political stance. It's called bribery, and they get charged. But of course, when it's Indigenous leaders, we'll just look the other way. He's also known for, look him up, a beautiful video of him getting pretty roughed up as he was drunkenly being arrested or whatnot in the past. Either way, not a credible man, but he's down there claiming that an independence vote would infringe on treaty rights, which is absolute baloney. It's absolutely untrue. But whether the judge takes that seriously or not, we'll see. Now, I drive on my other job. I spend a lot of time on the road all the time. And I listen to talk radio. There aren't too many options out there. And I can flip back and forth. I listen to a lot of podcasts and things too, but I can't always listen to that. So the radio I can flip on. I listen to talk radio. Either way, it keeps me up on what the other side's up to. Talk radio used to be a really good thing. It was influential, actually. Hosts like Rutherford, later Danielle Smith, even Dave Taylor, a reasonable liberal on there. But now it's just really gone to crap. It's just so far left-wing. They bring on just every left-wing dingbat as a guest on their shows. But listening to them the other day when Thomas Lukaszuk, again, he has his anti-Alberta petition, they had it as headline news. Every news update, every half hour. Really, this is the biggest story out there, is that Thomas Lukaszuk has begun his petition to block people from having an independence vote? Really? And then that morning, the morning host had Lukaszuk on for 20 minutes, a nice little infomercial. And then the next host on the next show replayed that whole interview for 20 more minutes there. They're just pumping the tires for Lukaszuk as hard as they can on this thing. Meanwhile, the Alberta Prosperity Project, you don't hear a thing about them. In fact, I listened to one of their morning hosts today who talked all the way around it and refused to name the Alberta Prosperity Project. They don't hesitate to name Lukaszuk, also known as Fabio. You got to remember, Lukaszuk is leading the group that was actually getting Alberta flags taken down. That's why I say it is an Alberta, anti-Alberta petition he's got going on. But it says so much that they aren't promoting the concept of Canada. They aren't promoting the concept of federalism. What they're trying to do is take away the ability to vote on it. These are anti-freedom people. I say this at a lot of the speeches I give at public, events and such when I get the privilege of being a speaker. I like to remind people the threat to your well-being isn't from the left, it isn't from the right. It's from authoritarians. And the left and the right both have them. They're the ones who want to control your life. They want to tell you what to do. They don't want you to have that freedom and ability to make your own decisions, to live how you choose to live. They feel they should be the ones telling you to do it. Well, the authoritarians are the ones telling you you aren't allowed to have a vote. They're telling you, we don't even want you to have a referendum on this. In fact, you should not be allowed to have it. Now, if the judge says it's not allowed, it's going to be interesting. It's going to put Premier Smith in a very, very difficult spot because over 70% of her supporters support independence, never mind a referendum. I think a referendum's coming either way. And bottom line is the judge can rule on it. The judge's role should be after a vote's held, not before. It's not the judge's role to tell us what we're allowed to vote on. But either way, if he chooses that, she can hold a referendum or have it held. And the bottom line is, what Alberta's got to be start saying anyways is the same thing Quebec says when they do things. What you going to do about it? I mean, seriously, Canada. Seriously, Carney. Seriously, Fabio. What if we just hold a referendum anyways? What you going to do about it? What you should do about it is campaign, I guess, on your cause, because we're going to get a vote on it. And you guys are obviously pretty terrified. I mean, you keep talking about saying it's a tiny minority of people who want to become independent. Then why are you so scared of letting us have a vote on the issue? What are you so afraid of? So if we hold it, what are you going to do about it? How are you going to stop it? Stand up for your principles. Let's put it to a vote. That was one of the most honest things, a rare thing out in the head Nancy right off the bat. When this was all coming up, he was saying, let's call the referendum right now. Because he's so confident that it would lose, that would put the issue to bed for a while. That's an honest approach to it. In fact, he might even be right. To be honest, I don't think the support is there for over 50%. We're still starting the process. We're moving towards it. We're heading for the goal line. It's going to happen. The other part, we talked about that on the Western Standard show. I do the panel show. And I talked about that with my guest, Jonathan Dennis, the other day. I don't think Premier Smith also wants to have this issue hanging over the general election that's going to come in 2 years. If there's going to be a full-out campaign happening for a referendum on independence, she wants that done and out of the way a year before the general election so that whatever they're campaigning on at that point, it's separate from the referendum campaign. So she's not going to let this get kicked down the road until suddenly there's a risk of holding a referendum 2 months before a general election. It'll be just too much of a mess. But either way, watch the news closely, guys. We'll see where this lands. And be sure, standing for freedom, standing for choice, standing for democracy. These are all the things that are threatened. Look at Canada. It's a basket case. You aren't even allowed to walk in the trees in Nova Scotia anymore. We can't be sucked down and dragged down by the people who've already given up on personal freedoms. The last bastion of it is here in Alberta. And we got the chance to stand up for it through independence, through a referendum. And look at our opponents. Look at them. They're anti-freedom people who do not trust you, who do not trust Albertans, do not respect Albertans. We're on the side of right. And again, one more plug. The Sovereigntist Handbook I wrote on it, how to campaign. Because when the referendum comes, we've got our work cut out for us to win it. It's still a ways from getting it over that goal line. But it's obviously closer than a lot of people might think when the opponents are trying to block the referendum altogether. So keep tuning into these videos. I appreciate those who have, subscribe, share, all that good stuff. That's how we can keep this rolling. Start getting ready to campaign. I mean, the firing, the starter pistol might be shooting pretty soon on the petitioning, on the real petition for the real independence referendum, depending on where that judge rules on that question. And even if he rules against it, I think we're still heading towards a referendum, but it's going to be a different approach. Because nothing is worse and more dangerous than putting a cork on democracy and saying you're not allowed to vote on something, because then the really dedicated people start looking for other ways then to pursue things, and that's not how we want to go.